Hey guys, this is Dion here with Your Guitar Academy, and in this lesson we're going to be taking those major cage shapes that we looked at in the previous lesson and applying them to a really simple chord progression in the key of A. So this is just to get you used to finding these shapes quickly and moving them around the neck a little bit. So grab your guitar and let's have a go. Before we get started, don't forget to head over to the website to find all additional materials, including tab, backing tracks, and also the lesson write-ups. And also, please don't forget to like and subscribe and leave us a comment, and we'd love to hear how you're getting on. Okay, so let's get to it and apply these shapes to a chord progression. So hopefully by now you should be a little bit more familiar with these major shapes, just in that key of A, as we looked at in the previous lesson, and used to knowing where the root notes are. So this is the perfect opportunity to now start applying it to a progression. So as well as applying it to a progression, we're just going to add a simple bit of rhythm to it as well, just a little kind of strumming pattern that I've put together so we can have a bit more of a kind of musical context. So the chord progression we're going to look at is in the key of A. So we're sticking to this key that we were looking at previously. And we're just going to play A chord, E chord, and a D chord. Just checking my tuning there. It sounded a little bit out, but I think we're okay. So A, E, and D. So I noticed there that I played them as open chords. Okay, so we're all quite used to playing these chords as intermediate guitarists, but you kind of bring it to the next level when you turn them into these caged chords, as I said. And obviously that's a very, very common thing that John Frusciante would do in his playing. So let's look at where we find these chords on the neck and what the kind of best way of doing that is. So when it comes to playing chords in progressions using caged chords, I always like to try and keep to a certain zone. So what I mean by that is I like to kind of avoid taking just one shape and moving it everywhere to play different chords. So for instance, if I had an A, D, and an E, A, E, D, that's the order we're going to play them in here. If I had those, I wouldn't advise you to kind of take one shape, for instance, the E shape, and play each of those chords with that one shape, because it's quite impractical. Obviously it works, it sounds fine. But you see, that's a hell of a lot of movement there. You're having to move all the way up to the 12th fret and back down again to the 5th fret. So what is advisable, which is what we're going to do now, is to combine these shapes together to try and stay in one zone. So we're going to start with that E shape, like that. The one that we just looked at in the previous lesson, that's our starting point. So the next chord, if you have a look on your workbook, is going to be an E chord. So I think it's a great idea to play this E chord as the C shape. So that would be here. So as you've seen there, that's very little movement across the fretboard. Okay, we're staying in this zone around that 5th fret, and it's very practical, very musical and very practical. So again, that's our E shape, playing an A chord. Then we're using our C shape to play an E chord. And remember, the root note is here, that 4th finger. Okay, so that note is an E. So that's our E chord, our 5 chord in this progression. And then you could use a couple of different chords, a couple of different shapes in the next one. So remember, it's a D chord. So you could either use the A shape there if you want, or if you want a bit more kind of melodic stuff on top, you know, a bit of a higher note on top, you can use that upper part of the G. Remember, that's barring across there. So it would sound like this. A shape or G shape there. Okay, so if I just play it a couple of times, you can hear how it works. 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. And I'll try it with the A shape this time, just for a bit of variation. Yeah, so that's making use of those three major chord shapes and applying them to a chord progression. So again, before you try any kind of strumming or anything like that, I'd recommend that you just get used to changing between them. So just get that muscle memory working, used to switching between these chords. I actually do personally prefer the sound of the G shape here because it gives us, again, as you'll see a bit later on, a bit more scope for some of these embellishments that we're going to be looking at. But they all work in their own way and they all sound really, really nice. So it's kind of down to you. And that's a lovely thing about the cage system is it gives you choice. So it doesn't limit you to just using one chord shape each time you play a certain chord. You can play a bunch of different chords all over the place. So yeah, that's our progression. That's how we move around with it. So let's just add a really simple 16th note strumming pattern here. We're just going to allow a bar for each of the chords. So 4 whole beats. So remember with 16th notes, you've got to get your hand moving fairly quick, 4 times per beat. And we count it as 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. So let me just play you the pattern first and then we can look into what's actually going on. So I'll just try it on one chord for now. I'll just try it on the first chord. So I've got a little drum beat on the go here. And the pattern's going to sound something like this. 3, 4. Okay, so you'll see again with any strumming, obviously I'm not hitting every note, but you'll see you've got to keep your hand going and anytime you watch John Frusciante or anyone similar style play, their hand will be going like the clappers and it keeps them in time, especially in a funk context when you get a bit faster as well. So make sure your hand is consistently moving there. And let's have a look at what beats we're actually hitting the strings on there. So right on beat number 1, we're going to hit the strings and then we miss 3 strums. So it goes 1, E and A. Okay, so 3 ghost strums there on the E and A of 1. And then we also hit on beat number 2. So 1, E and A, 2, E and. But then if you have a look at the strumming pattern, on the A, which is the final 16th note of beat 2, we hit the upstroke. So that sounds something like this. 1, E and A, 2, E and A. Okay, once again. 1, E and A, 2, E and A. 1, E and A, 2, E and A. 1, E and A, 2, E and A. So it's a great idea if you're not used to this style of playing to just break it down like that. Just take it step by step and really kind of look at where you're hitting, and also counting out loud is incredibly helpful for this sort of thing. Or even just tapping your foot or nodding in some way. It helps just get that internal metronome going. So that's up to the end of beat 2. And then the second half we have 3E, which we miss. So 3, E, and then on and, we hit it, miss the A of 3, and then we hit 4. So it goes 3, E, and. Oh, let me just check, I'm checking I got that right. Yeah, 3, E, and A, 4, E, and A. 3, E, and A, 4, E, and A. So if we combine those 2 halves, it gives us this. 1, E, and A, 2, E, and A, 3, E, and A, 4, E, and A. 1, E, and A, 2, E, and A, 3, E, and A, 4, E. A bit faster. 1, E, and A, 2, E, and A, 3, E, and A, 4, E, and A. And you can just gradually build up that speed until you hit something like. Okay, and it's at that point you can start applying it with the combining it, with the chord changes. So again, we'll be going E shape for the A, first chord, C shape for the E, second chord, G shape for the D, third chord. Okay, applied with some drums. 2, 3, 4, and. again, if you wanted to try it with the A shape for that third chord, feel free. Like this. And there we go. So that's a simple chord progression. It's a 1-5-4 chord progression in the key of A, using these major caged chords that we looked at in the first lesson, and then applying a bit of strumming to get you just used to moving them around in this kind of musical context. So you want to just try and work on that nice and slow, slow and steady, and just get used to the changes and the combination of the two. Take your time, gradually build that speed up. Definitely use some drums or a metronome if you can, super important. Because as I said previously, this is such a kind of rhythmic style that we're going to be learning here. John's hand is incredibly metronomic. So definitely, you know, from the get-go, you should be using drums and metronome for practicing this. So have fun with that, and I'll see you in the next lesson. That's it for this lesson. If you want to go to the next lesson, you can click here. And if you want to go back to the beginning of the course, you can click here. And also, please like and subscribe. And also leave us a comment. Any questions, we'd love to hear how you're getting on.